Yes, especially since muscle testing, at least in certain circles, has gained a bad reputation. I need to sort of start maybe at the beginning, at my personal beginning. So there was from 1974 to about 1978. I did the research leading to my thesis on aspects of the autonomic nervous system, and at the time we looked at what monitoring equipment is available to monitor qualitative and quantitative changes in the autonomic nervous system. And by looking deeply into that, we realized that there isn't a single aspect of our metabolism that is not under the intelligent control of the autonomic nervous system. And then I was watching over the last 30 years how, at least in American science, and American science dominates the world right now, we were seeking for explaining every phenomenon on a biochemical level, forgetting that most of the enzyme systems, the proteins that regulate our metabolism, are themselves under the control of signals. And these signals can be biochemical or they can be electric. And the electric systems, which is more than half of the control mechanism that our metabolome has, the entirety of the proteins, that is under control of the autonomic nervous system. So what I stumbled into with my thesis was a major regulatory mechanism of our health and every parameter connected with it, including the transcription of genes and the expression of things like insulin resistance and other candida and chronic infections, because the white blood cells that have to do with the control of infections are themselves also under control of the autonomic nervous system. I stumbled across something that wasn't in its dimension really known in the American medical group, the physicians that I relate with. I was looking myself at tools how to monitor the autonomic nervous system. We looked at heart rate variability. We looked at different instruments that came from Russia. We looked at different tools like lie detectors. And I studied with Paul Nogier, who developed a pulse test that can show changes in the autonomic nervous system called the VAS. And then I stumbled across the applied kinesiology and found that to be an extremely valuable tool if the results are interpreted in terms of changes of the stress tonus, the stress level in the system. And this is sort of where I fell into an argument with the chiropractic community, which tried to explain the phenomena observed in kinesiology based on changes in the sensory and motor nervous system, ignoring the autonomic nervous system. And so I eventually was forced to develop my own system of testing where the theory and what was known about the autonomic nervous system and the phenomena that occur with it could be related to the changes that we saw in the muscle strength testing. So this was a long journey. It took me 20 years, and I had many teachers in this. Amongst them, an important one was Dr. Yoshiaki Omura, who developed his own form of testing using the so-called bidigital O-ring test. And I also incorporated the German teaching from Reinhold Voll called electroacupuncture. And eventually the system gelled into one consistent, intelligent, logical system called autonomic response testing that may on the surface look like conventional applied kinesiology, at times also may look like the O-ring testing from Dr. Omura, but is in itself a consistent system that is very, very different and leads to more accurate, more permanent, more profound results than the other systems do, because the theory is closer to the truth the theory used underlying these other systems. So I've been teaching the system now for many years to many practitioners, and other practitioners that use the system have the same or similar results that I do, which for me proves the point. This is not another way of using the body as a pendulum or using one's psychic abilities and make them visible through the muscle testing, but this is a true system based in physiology and repeatable experiments.
Well, I think that's the key, and you mentioned it earlier, is that there is, I think, a well-justified prejudice to a significant percentage of people who do muscle testing, because and I'd like you to review this, is that the general appreciation is that unless one is absolutely objective and completely blinded to the outcome, there's a potential for them to influence the results of their test. And then there's other components, that just as their own health and their own aspects, that could influence the outcome of that test. And that's really, I think, one of the highlights and the benefits of your system. It's a very sophisticated approach to remove those variables from the test so that you can have this consistent, reliable outcome that is going to produce similar results no matter who the tester is, as long as they're following this process. So I'm wondering if you could describe how you're able to eliminate those variables that in most people's systems of muscle testing aren't valid to get an appropriate outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can give maybe tell this with some examples. For example, if you have a patient who is highly allergic to wheat, and a practitioner has just eaten a portion of spaghetti and is full of wheat, then this wheat will be in the system, and there will be signals, wheat-related signals, throughout the physician's system, which will be broadcasted into his field. And so, in this case, the patient will respond to the practitioner as if the practitioner was a vial of wheat, and will have a reaction. That means when the practitioner now tests the patient will already be in a reactive state. And it could be that this is a patient who never eats wheat because he knows he's got a wheat allergy and has a good life, and his health problems come from a totally different area. But to this physician, it will look like that this patient has a huge wheat allergy. And that's the only problem that needs to be fixed. Yeah, so we call this induction phenomena, where the physician induces a change in the patient and then tries to fix that change. But that problem is not reflecting the patient's real reality. It's just an induced problem in the moment induced by the practitioner. And so we have a whole set of pretests that eliminate these induction phenomena. Likewise, it could also be that if the physician has, for example, a wheat allergy, and the patient doesn't, and the patient has just eaten the spaghetti, the patient will induce the allergic state in the practitioner, and the practitioner becomes dysfunctional and cannot do the testing because he's in an allergic reactive state. And so I think that this simple example makes it clear that there needs to be a method and a clean path in the beginning to establish safe parameters that make it clear that when we find things on a patient, they really belong to the patient and really reflect the patient's problem and not the physician's problem. So we call this the pretests, and certain pretests are common to all schools of energetic medicine. But the main thing is that when we're working on the level of energy, patient and physician, patient and practitioner cannot be in an objective way be separated. They're together in a joint field, and the practitioner needs to know what is his or her part of the field and what is the part of the field that's the patient's. And that's, of course, a learning process that's not overnight, and a process of sorting things out very carefully before any assumptions can be made about the patient. And we are very, very careful in this ART system with that. So I think that's all like in the framework that we have here with the interview. I think that's as far as I can take that.